the things are, settled on the basis of those very violent, fights that we have. But the point is, we must ask our politicians how much vision they have at all. Because if you don't have vision, then you are not prepared even to have a shot at the office for any reason. In our country, in the past, we used to have leaders who were not prepared, for office. Many of them came by accident. Many of them were conscripted, to run for office, even when they didn't have ideas at all. Now, in terms of the vision that we have, it is true that politicians are not expected to know all that they need to know. We know, for instance, that when Nelson Mandela was president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela had a team, that was led by Thabo Mbeki, that ran government, and those issues were there. I mean, at the time, I was head of Department of Political Science, in a South African university, and on a monthly basis, we were invited to have conversations with the president, where we were asked, how are things going? Are we doing well? And so on and so on. And those same meetings were held with professors of economics, of engineering, of agric, and so on, just to find out, that there has to be. So vision is something that, is a process that is open-ended and, must be expanded, must be, reduced at several points. And I'm also reminded of now it's unfortunate that, when you have these examples outside of Nelson Mandela, you find things that immediately suggest that they are not good examples. But still, we must give them. When Jacob Zuma, became president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, has a personality that is not arrogant at all. He doesn't assume that he knows anything. So he brought around him people who know. And the kinds of things that, Comrade was saying about the Babangida era in our country, where you bring people to bear, those kinds of, contributions that you get from teamwork, the collegiality, and the fact that a leader is the one who, having understood the core issues, can then go out there and be guided and so on. Which takes us to the point, that was raised by the AA flag bearer. Why are politicians afraid of issue-based, campaigns? It's simply because they are hollow. Many of them, they just don't. It's politics without vision. They don't know what they are doing. So, I mean, people who believe that there's a shortcut to success, electoral success, they will think that these things are just a waste of time. And the people who take them seriously and, dwell on issues are seen as unserious people, too academic. I mean, how many times have you seen people who invite you for things and they say, oh, Professor Kekwe, Professor Sagai, those guys, they don't know anything. The things that they say to you are just, from the theory. They speak grammar, and yet ideas rule the world. I mean, that's the truth. Each time I see, and, I want us to take this very seriously, thanks to CNN and BBC, one night, one young man, couldn't have been more than 30, came, he was defending Israel in Israel's, conflict with the Palestinians. And my God, I mean, how countries like Israel manage to find the finest and the best. I mean, if speech alone was enough to move mountains, you would say Israel is it. I mean, he so conquered the world that I was just thinking of my country. When it was a turn of the Palestinians, there was a girl who was even younger than the Israeli representative. My God. When they finished, I shed tears for my country. because we have a way of pushing forward the very worst of our kind. The very worst of our kind. It is when Nigerians, find themselves in comparative situations and you hear our representatives talk, that it suddenly dawns on you that we have a long way to go. So we're talking of politics with vision, and I hope we'll get there.
And thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much, Professor Sagai, and I want to appreciate that. Now, again, if I would assume by the, we don't have questions coming in here. I want to assume that we thoroughly enjoyed the lecture. But again, I'm going to ask the convener of the Unity House Foundation. He has a question, and I have a question as well, Prof. But first, let's welcome the convener of the Unity House Foundation for his question. Please, let's put our hands together for him. Thank you.
As an associate professor, when I consistently find myself in the midst of professors, so in a gathering where Professor Kekwe was there, Professor 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 Kekwe was, and some other eminent professors, including the serving vice chancellor, I was conscripted to more or less. And I became an associate prof. And Professor Sagai has endorsed that with a nod and a wonderful smile. Anyway, as I was sitting there, my real me was coming and going. I was asking myself, should I really come up and ask this question? But if I didn't ask, if I didn't say, that won't be me. We're talking about ideas driven. He's not my friend for nothing. We're not mates, but I relate with him very well because every moment with him is a different class altogether. I believe in ideas, but the biggest challenge we have as a community is what I want to call the democratization of disorganization, where people now think it is okay to be disorganized. We're having an ideas-driven event. It's where politicians come in, disorganized event, and they go. Some come with the mindset of announcing themselves in a certain way that is very discouraging of any attempt to hold civil conversation, which is at the bed or the foundation of the conversation we're having this morning. So I don't know how we're ever going to be able to get to the point where those who want to lead us will understand that one way of communicating with us is to speak with us. You talk about communication, like Prof said, Architect Cole said he went to London. It's okay to go to London, it's okay to go to anywhere. But my friend Professor Ekekwe rightly pointed out that the solution is here. My only point of difference would be when he said Dr. Emerson Bariko is the solution. The solution is us. Those of us who feel differently about the way this country is managed must be vigilant. Professor Kiko talked about it. And part of the vigilance is to be able to say no to the very silly things politicians say and hold our heads high. You can imagine the amount of energy that was put in trying to put this event together. Politicians just came and disorganized it. Take, for example, you have an event, you are given adequate information. If you like, call it letters or cards of invite. 1 whole month ahead of the event. You now go and then fix other events on that same day and take those other events as an excuse for acting the way they are acting. I'm constraining myself not to go further, but I think it's important that we understand that bit, which goes to what I think it was Dr. Dawari George said. I must commend him. He came here from the beginning of event. He planned for his day that this event was going to last for 2 hours, and he came here and he stayed on beyond 2 hours. So I take serious recognition of that fact. The issue of psychiatric evaluation. People who act the way our politicians act are not acting the normal way you think people should act. So don't you think, as a sociologist, that it is because of the state of their sanity that they behave the way they behave, to think that to be disorderly, it's okay? Let me, before Shagun begins to collect the microphone.
Thank you so much, sir.
So
Please.
I think I endorse the fact that all our political aspirants or candidates should be subjected to serious psychiatric evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And actually, my line of thinking is similar to the convener, because, Prof, you talked about disorderliness as a tool for governance. And when you made that point, it has been going through my mind. Is it a deliberate way? Is it planned? Or is it our culture that informs this kind of idea? So I would ask that Prof talk a little bit. Now, madam, we have a question. Now, we're trying very hard to make sure that we wrap up this event by 2 o'clock. Please come forward. And after that, I will be speaking to Barrister. Thank you. Yes. Please.
Thank you, sir. Good day, everybody. Professors, I want to use just 2 minutes. I left my house with a question. When I got the invite, I have this question on my mind, and I felt I should say it before I leave. Professors, I listened to the discussions, and I'm well pleased. My question is this. Everything is on place, but what is INEC doing concerning security issues? It's a big one. I want to come out to vote for my candidate. The fear is, will I be safe? As a young girl growing up in Rivers State, I go out, my parents are not worried. They are worried for one thing. Why is she keeping late? But now, children go out, and you're scared. Is the person alive? Is the person coming back healthy? When I was a young girl, I come back home. Why are you coming now? And that's it. But now, when your child is out and the child comes back, you're like, hey, then they only spank and that's it. So what is INEC doing when it comes to security? Okay, I just have the song to sing. It's a jingle. It's a jingle. River State is a great state. Oh yes, that's not in doubt. River State will remain great only if you do your best. You can do it. I can do it. We all can do it if we try. So let's do it. Let us do it. Let us make rivers great. That was a jingle years ago. So please, what is INEC going to do when it comes to security? So we all can come out to cast our vote without fear. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And the last question we'll be taking is from Mr. Godwin Uranusi. You're welcome, sir. Oh, that's the one. Okay, after Mr. Godwin, please. Could you just write it on a piece of paper, please? It will be faster that way. We need to round up by 2 o'clock.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Professors, you did a wonderful job on the subject matter before us. The guest speaker spoke a whole lot on a number of issues. And in the course of your presentation, you made reference to the fact that the foundation that we have in this country is fractured. And because that foundation is fractured, some of the things that we are used to, the things that have characterized us as a country, are anomalies here, but we accept them because of the fractured foundation. But these things are an anathema in developed crimes. Now, as a professor of sociology, anthropology, politics, okay. What things do we need to do? What do we need to do to correct that fractured foundation to be able to give us the kind of country and system that we need. Now, there was something, Professor Eke, there was something you made reference to earlier on when you were taking on a question that was asked by someone. The nexus between governance and the intelligentsia in other countries of the world, we see that nexus work so well, and that gives birth to better ways of doing things, a better society. We don't see that nexus here in Nigeria, where the intelligentsia would help in driving the process of governance to give us what we need as a people. So what do we need to do to correct this fracture?
Thank you so much, Mr. Godwin Ranusi. Again, I'm going to appeal. If you have a question, kindly write it down on a piece of paper. This will allow us to be a bit faster because we are due to close by 2 o'clock. But I will allow the gentleman. Thank you, sir. Please, all those, write down your question on a piece of paper, please.
Thank you, everyone. I'll just stand on the existing protocol. My question is not actually a fear that I have that I want the professors to help me with. It is all right, as I said, from what they were saying. We had examples of elections in Edo State, Osun State, and they all went very well because INEC had enough time to concentrate on those individual states. But when there's a general election and it occupies all the states, first and foremost, what do we do? We have not had a census. So what do we do about the population, and how do we get INEC to be able to work? Because I keep getting confused how an arid land, like where a majority of the land is arid in Kano, would have, and a state has come out of Kano, Jigawa, for example, and it is still the largest population in Nigeria, when it's mainly full of arid land. So I asked, somebody said about the foundation of our system. I asked, when are we going to have a proper census for us not to do, to be able to know the population of people that we actually have? When we do individual states, it's easy for INEC to get the result right when you're concentrating on one state. But when every state is there, it allows for rigging, even with the central organization. So I just want to know what you think we can do with that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So again, I'll welcome Professor Sagai. Again, let's do it in 5 minutes. And Professor Eme, also in 5.
Thank you, sir. You've raised a very fundamental point. I have never believed that we have a population of 200 million people. I mean, we have problems with data and statistics. I would be shocked if we are 120 million people. I would really be shocked. But, you know, as a people, these figures that we cite ever so often are approximations from the UNDP and the World Bank, you know, and other external bodies. They are not products of our census. But, you know, I have my doubts, you know, about the reliability, you know, of the figures that we read out. I mean, for instance, these days, because they say it with figures, you would hear there are 1,000,003 cancer cases in Nigeria. I mean, you have to ask, well, how did they arrive at such data? You know, these days I live more in Lagos, and, you know, I'm told that the private schools in Lagos are about, you know, 83,000, when there are 3 private schools on most streets in Lagos. I mean, so these things, we have problems with, you know, how to say it with figures. That's a problem. But I agree with you. Unfortunately, these things are not under INEC's control. You know, INEC, you know, is at the receiving end, you know, of the things that are given. When we have, you know, the mappings of our constituencies, INEC has increased those, you know, voting centers now in response to demands, you know, that are made on the basis of so-called population figures. INEC has to respond to those things. It's the same thing with security. You say, what does INEC do with security? INEC doesn't have its own police force. INEC doesn't have the DSS. INEC can only work with them and use information, intelligence reports that come from them. You know, so in a sense, I think we should be sorry for INEC because you know, there's a lot that INEC can do and is doing to work with these security agencies. I know that, you know, together with civil society and so on, meetings, you know, consultative meetings are taking place, political parties, and they are saying those things. When it comes to the doing, the enforcement of those kinds of issues, INEC, you know, can only go so far. The institutions themselves have to work. But there's something that, you know, we must count as gain. You know, the last Ekiti state election, before the most recent one, and the last Osun state election, before the most recent one, these elections, you know, were very problematic elections, together with the election in Kogi State, you know, where some constituencies had to rerun because they say the results were too close to call, and, you know, they were, what is that word that they use? They were inconclusive. Inconclusive. You know, those things were possible because people snatched ballot boxes, you know, there were all kinds of things and so on. Like I said, in the case of Edo State, you know, before 2020, in 2016, at the point of collation, at 2 a.m., the lights suddenly went out. And, you know, many people believe that, you know, figures were cooked up and so on. So if INEC is to be believed, and we must believe them and support them, the kinds of things they are putting in place will minimize, not necessarily eliminate, you know, those things, but would reduce them, we hope. But, you know, these are the kinds of things, you know, that just show us that elections may be so critical, but elections don't make up democracy. Elections don't make up governance. You know, there is the fallacy of electoralism, where you believe that everything is reduced to elections. But I think we must also accept ourselves that, you know, we have come a long way. Until a few elections ago, we approached elections like they were do or die wars. Very zero-sum in character, and people were ready to die, and so on and so on. But it does appear that we are becoming a little more civil, you know, in these engagements. That people are beginning to even take seriously the kinds of issues that, you know, would have taken for granted in the past. So there is room to hope, you know, that things can improve. But a lot will depend on what we, the people, do. You know, if we take it as business as usual, that will be very bad. I mean, I expect, for instance, you know, that thing I said about showing your ballot paper. Something has to happen there, I hope. Now that you have heard, when you go to the polling booth and you see people doing that, you should tell them, stop it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Prof. Please, let's put our hands together for Prof. And please let me welcome Professor Kekwe for another 5 minutes to respond. Please, I want us to keep the time because we're running out of our planned time. And while you're at that, sir, somebody also talks about the social media. Says social media is currently playing a major role in decentralizing information, sharing, and political sensitization. In view of this, I wish to know what could be done or put in place to ensure that the speech is sustained and hate speech is fought against on the social media platform.
If that's part of the question I'm to respond to, then I should have more than 5 minutes. I think that's only fair. But I'll try for 5 minutes. The question about the role of the intelligentsia and the confusion that we thrive in, as well as the security question, I think they're all tied together. If we look at it this way, that every social condition, fractured, otherwise, Prof, or not, has beneficiaries. And those beneficiaries will try to sustain that social condition. When people don't want issues discussed or afraid of issues, yes, it's been said they're empty, but it pays. And the only reason it pays is what our guest lecturer mentioned earlier, transactional politics. If I go and collect 10,000 naira and I show my vote and it is accepted, I allow that person to get away with not having discussed issues, with not having said things that concern me because I was hungry. That would begin to make what the APC candidate, if I understood him correctly, I think he tended to say that there was something to be said for stomach infrastructure. Stomach infrastructure is part of that program of running away from issues. And the man who popularized stomach infrastructure, the day he was doing it, that man who eventually left politics had a broken neck. And he was crying, said, if he dies, hold the Inspector General of Police. The day he was talking about stomach infrastructure, he was giving chicken out on the streets. The pictures are there in the newspaper. It's the same as giving people 5,000 naira to say, go and vote. What Unity House Foundation has done today is to say to us, no. Let's come back. Yes, we may be hungry, but let's define the issues that will solve the hunger. Not let us get the money to go and eat now. And until we begin to do that and force the political parties to do that, we'll have this problem. Finally, on the issue of census, I agree. I don't think we're up to 200 million in this country. I don't know the number. But in my opinion, one of the ways to deal with that issue, because we never have a credible census, if it comes too close to being real, we'll create confusion. And it didn't start today. It started even before independence. So it's not as if it was just this regime. That every regime that has come at the federal level has benefited from it. And it was a foundation put in there by the British. But it seems to me that the only way to begin to solve that problem is if we restructure this country and took away all the attraction of the center and return the power to the states, at least to some degree, so that the man who's in Kano begins to be careful that when it comes to Kano election, it's only Kano citizens who vote. Otherwise, without attention to the center, he doesn't care if they like to come from Chad, Benue, or wherever to come and vote in Kano. He will allow it because it's federal, and they want federal power to be with them. When it now comes to the fact that in this state, we want citizens of this state or bona fide residents of this state to vote, we become more careful with those numbers. About social media, it's not an area I know very well. But social media is as much a curse as it is a promise. And we have to use it very carefully. Yes, it democratizes the process. It decentralizes information. But it also provides enough scope for false news, false information. And that's what the politicians thrive on, both in Nigeria and in the United States. And so we have to be very careful about social media. We can't jump to say it is true. And these days, they have made fake news. It's been so refined that it is very difficult to distinguish it from the real thing. Those are the only comments I can make for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you indeed. And we must sincerely thank our guest lecturers, Professor Eme Ekekwe. Thank you so much, sir, for coming to speak to us this morning. And also a big thank you to Professor Egosa Osagai. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. We quite appreciate it. Please, let's put our hands together for these distinguished scholars. Let's put our hands together for them. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sirs. We quite appreciate it. Thank you. Now, we're rounding up this event right now to do a brief vote of thanks. Please, let me welcome Mr. Peter Ekekwe. Thank you so much. A vote of thanks on behalf of the Unity House Foundation. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the convener, the board of directors, and the management of Unity House Foundation, I'm glad to stand here to express our gratitude. I want to say a special thank you to Professor Ehosa. Thank you, sir. He, to the best of my knowledge, is one of the busiest people you can come across. I'm sure his table is full. But when he got the request to be with us today, it didn't take him 30 minutes to say, yes, I will be with you people. And for that, sir, we are very grateful. Thank you very much. Professor Ekekwe is fortunately my brother. He's very fortunate to have me as his brother. So I'm very free to talk. I will tell him thank you when we get to the house. But for now, thank you very much on behalf of Unity House. To all of us, time is important, time is precious. So we value the fact that despite what else you have to do today, you found time to be with us. We want to say a very big thank you. May the Lord bless you all. Amen.
And thank you so much. And thank you to our distinguished professors. And we've had the closing remarks and the vote of thanks. But again, it continues. This is to stimulate our appetite on what should be. We are now ambassadors of all of the policies and all of the ideas outlined here. And we're to cascade it down because we reach more people than Prof. and Professor Emekekwe can actually reach. And again, we want to thank you so much. We're hoping that Unity House Foundation will take up the challenge of debate amongst the standard bearer on security or insecurity. And we look forward to that. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for coming. God bless you.
And we continue